Welcome to the Burgundy Boss podcast. This is your Burgundy Boss, Derek here. And tonight I have a special guest, Brandon Smith. He's here with me. So, Brandon, tell me what you thought of that game.
A win is a win is a win. The Titans have somehow found a way to win dirty, win sloppy, in so many occasions this year. And frankly, with Derrick Henry out, if you look at our schedule, I mean, just going 500 gets us in the playoffs, even with a red hot Colts team coming on. So, especially with as frustrating as the last couple of losses have been, losing that game in Pittsburgh that we had. I mean, really, we had no business losing. You take away those three unforced fumbles, and that game is a completely different game. To come in on Thursday night in a primetime game against a San Francisco team that everyone expects to come in and get a quality win, try to hold on to their playoff hopes. It doesn't matter how we got it done. So another thing is to see AJ Brown back, and if that was 85% of AJ Brown, come on.
Yeah.
I mean, that's where we're at. This is what happens when we have 85% of one of our three skill position players.
Yeah, definitely. And I'm sitting here and I was talking to a couple buddies of mine, and they're like, "Oh, I don't really think Tennessee has anything to play for." I'm like, "Oh no, Tennessee's trying to keep their playoff hopes alive too." Because a lot of us are kind of just NFC fans, and a couple of those guys don't really pay attention to the whole NFL. It's just their
Yeah,
team. So I'm like, no, Tennessee is fighting for their lives just as much as the 49ers are.
yeah, absolutely. And the thing about us right now is that have our range of possible outcomes, even this late in the season, is incredibly large. We still have a legitimate chance at the one seed, and there's still a very real chance we get bounced out of the playoffs. Um, so for us to get this win and take our magic number down to one, especially against a Colts team that, if you look at the rest of their schedule, they've got the Cardinals at probably the best time of the year. I mean, you could not have asked to get a Cardinals team that's really harder than it is right now. They've got a Raiders team that's absolutely falling apart. I mean, they cannot find a way to win right now, even though they're putting up the stats they should put up to get wins. And they're playing a Jags team that, let's be honest, they didn't even get the post Meyer bounce. So I mean, there's a very real chance the Colts are on the table. So we have to get had to get two of these last three wins.
Oh yeah, definitely. And it's funny you mentioned the Raiders because even Washington was able to run in there and stumble around and roll into a win, in the Death Star. So that says all you need to know about the Raiders really to this point. I mean, just the complete collapse of their team. And I have a few friends that are Raiders fans, and I live in Kansas City, so I get
Mhm.
a lot. I get a lot of the flack from Chiefs fans, a lot of the flack from Raiders fans, and it's fun to see both sides of that rivalry. But yeah, the Raiders, ever since it started with Gruden, and then it rolled over to Ruggs and David Arnett, and it's just completely snowballed all the way down the hill for them, and they're looking like they just can't find, like you said, they can't find a way to win.
Yeah, I mean, let's be honest. They got lucky. They caught Cleveland at the most opportune time. I mean, half that team was out with COVID. They got a third string quarterback, and they still barely won that game. You look at what's coming out the rest of the year for the Raiders. The Broncos are 7-7. The Broncos, honestly, I wrote the Broncos off after week 6. I mean, they lost three games in a row. Teddy Bridgewater was lost. Judy was out for a long time. To be completely honest, that team has come back around really nicely. And then the Colts aforementioned, and then you got the Chargers, who are still fighting for a playoff spot. I mean, the Raiders are probably a 7-10 football team.
Yeah, I mean, like you were talking about the Broncos, the Broncos, they even beat the Cowboys, which, it shocked everybody at that point. I think that the Broncos are kind of playing that we're going to run the ball, we're going to play really good defense and hope that we can just get a little bit out of our passing attack and scrape up some wins.
Absolutely. I mean, the Broncos. I have never sold my stock on Teddy Bridgewater Island. I will ride with that guy until he is out of the league. But I mean, let's be honest here. If they had a better quarterback right now with the weapons they've got in the passing game, Jerry Judy, Noah Fant, KJ Hamler, people talking about Russ Wilson, Aaron Rodgers going to that team. I mean, if you have a top 10 quarterback on that team, they're probably Super Bowl contenders. Let's
Even
be honest.
Javante Williams, he's proven that he's a workhorse.
Oh yeah, no, he was a pleasant surprise for my fantasy league this year. Let me tell you.
Yeah. All right, so I have a few questions for you that we're going to kind of roll into.
Absolutely.
All right, so this is kind of might be a hot take on your end. I'll give you my rankings as well, but I want you to rank these three wide receivers:
All right.
DK Metcalf, AJ Brown, Terry McLaurin.
I mean, if I think after the performance tonight, I think it is fair to put AJ Brown as a 1. But honestly, I think
All
Metcalf
three
is
of them are
close.
ones, really.
Yeah, I think Metcalf is a close 2. I really do. I think the margin is small. And as someone who grew up in Eastern Ohio as an Ohio State fan, it's hard for me to put Terry McLaurin as the third person in that list. But I think what Terry misses is the ability to use his body, and be physical, almost in the way a tight end is, to get the some of the critical third downs and some of the short to medium range things that Metcalf and AJ Brown can. McLaurin's a speedster. He's a burner. But like, to be completely honest, I mean, he's Djax if Djax can stay healthy,
Yeah, yeah,
which is
that's
still terrifying. Don't get me wrong. But I think when you talk about it from an all-around receiver perspective, I mean, AJ Brown and DK Metcalf are on the same college team. I
yep,
mean, that was big. I forget who the quarterback was, but essentially, I mean, I'm going to throw it up to two of my 6'3" physical freaks. Somebody's going to come down with it, right? I mean,
yeah.
it's a different. You're playing a different game when you have someone who is both fast enough and physical enough to go up and make a play against essentially any defender.
I almost want to say that it was Jordan Teamu that was their quarterback.
It was actually. Now that you mention it, that's a great call.
And it's funny because we just released him off of our practice squad today. That's the only
Yeah,
reason that he's on my mind a little bit. See, for me, when I'm ranking those three, I take quarterback play into perspective, and I think Terry would take a step up if he had decent quarterback play. So for me, it's AJ Brown 1, Terry McLaurin 2, DK Metcalf 3. DK, I mean, in my opinion, DK has all the talent surrounding him, and even when he's put in the opportunity to make a play, a lot of the time he doesn't. And I guess you could make that same argument for Terry McLaurin, but I can't tell you how many times this year I've seen Terry, like even the other night, Terry beat Darius Slay, had 5 yards on him, had to come back to the ball and make a contested catch because Garrett Gilbert can't get the ball to him. And he hasn't had a quarterback with a strong enough arm to be able to throw him the deep ball. But I really do like your comparison of Djax if Djax could stay healthy.
yeah. I mean, I think I agree with what you're saying there. I think McLaurin would really thrive in a system that allows for him to run, a lot of deep routes and have someone who honestly have tell the quarterback to overthrow him
Yeah.
and let him run under the ball and grab it.
Okay, so on to my next question I've got for you. How do you feel about Ryan Tannehill to this point?
Ryan Tannehill is exactly the quarterback who can not lose you a Super Bowl.
Yeah,
He is the guy who, if you put the right team around him, will not screw up in a critical situation. And I think, and now that being said, you look at what he did tonight. He had 207 passing yards. 142 of them were AJ Brown. You gave him a single weapon, and he made the most of it. I mean, you had one ball to Julio Jones. You had a couple balls to Ferkser. Two or three of the receivers had negative receiving yards for the game. You gave him one weapon, and you found a way to make something happen with it.
yeah.
Did it take three? Did it take two and a half? Did it take 2.5 quarters for us to get there? Sure, but I think you can win a Super Bowl with Ryan Tannehill if you put the right team around him. And I think what we've seen from him is that in a critical situation, you take the fourth down play away from last week. It is what it is. I think he put the ball in a place where his receiver could theoretically go and get the first down, and the defender for Pittsburgh Joe Hayden made a fantastic play. And you look and you look at his stats from here on out. The biggest weakness with Tannehill, as we know, is that he does not perform terribly well when he's pressured. And if you look at what we did tonight, I mean, we had a patchwork offensive line. Dylan Dradden's our first round pick, who has been a disaster this year. Up through in the preseason, they could even play him in the preseason. He was so bad. Suddenly, shut down Nick Bosa for a whole half. David Quessenberry, who I think has played every position on our offensive line in the past year and a half, comes in as a super backup. And I mean, we patched together. You saw what happened today. We had time. When he had time, he delivers the ball.
Yeah.
And I think that if you look at the teams looking down the playoffs, I mean, is anyone really going to have a better pass rush than the San Francisco 49ers? I mean, you look at that team, that defense, top to bottom, is one of the best defenses in the NFL. And if you look at the teams, especially in the AFC, if we're talking about getting to the Super Bowl, who's going to have a better pass rush? The Kansas City Chiefs sure aren't. The Ravens, depending on their day, may put up something similar. Okay. And, and the Patriots, maybe again, they played well against us. But second crack, I think we would play pretty well against them, especially if we had Derrick Henry.
I was going to say Kansas City would put up the biggest fight. That last game you just saw that Kansas City just played, that was without Chris Jones, and they were still getting pressure. I mean, I don't know what Melvin Ingram is on, but he's been playing lights out ever since he got to Kansas City. It's been crazy to watch him. And you were talking about Ryan Tannehill. One of the reasons I bring that question up, my dad is a Miami Dolphins fan. And so for years I heard about how terrible Ryan Tannehill is, and all he does is throw away the game if he can't run out of the pocket. And it was funny. It's nice to see him, playing well. He's finally settled into that quarterback role. For the longest time we heard, he's still converting from wide receiver to quarterback. He's still making that conversion. And still from time to time, he'll catch a ball. They'll run a trick play and he'll catch it.
The thing I was talking with my dad about today during this game was it genuinely seems like every defense for one play a game forgets he was a college receiver. Like there's one play where they rush 3, they don't set a spy on him, and he pops out. And yes, he's stiff and he's kind of awkward, but then you realize, oh wait, he's running as fast as the linebackers. And I mean, you saw the critical play there that got us in the field goal range was like a 14-yard run. Yeah, he put his head down like a receiver and fought for the extra yards. He didn't slide on that.
Yeah, I mean, running, he looks like Tom Brady running, but he's moving 4 times as fast.
Correct.
So it's really crazy to see him run. He has that misleading athleticism that they talk about all the time, and it was good to see that. I was pulling for him, because I need 49ers to lose to even have a shot. So, and it's still a long shot, even with them losing tonight.
Does it pain you a little bit that in order to stay alive, you had to see the Cowboys clinch the second playoff spot?
Yeah, that hurt a little bit. But the Cowboys are on something crazy right now. I can't even describe. So, I want you to name the most underrated players on both sides of the ball for Tennessee. One on offense, one on defense, that nobody knows about except for Titan fans.
Defensively, Tier Tart, our defensive tackle. He's a second year. He came in as an undrafted free agent, and he has played extremely good football. He really started to come on probably about week 12 or 13 of last year. And what we've seen is that when he is in the game, he is a difference maker. He is, with our system, he's one of those guys who doesn't put up a lot of stats, but you can tell when he's healthy and he's playing. He clogs up the middle of the field with him and Naquan Jones, who has been a little beat up. I mean, they're part of the reason why our pass rush went from historically bad to one of the better pass rushes in the span of a year. Now, Bud Dupree certainly helps. Don't get me wrong. Yeah. But Danico Autry was an amazing pickup from Indianapolis. I mean, obviously very happy to steal him from a division rival. But defensively, Tart is definitely the guy that most people don't know about. Offensively,
is Tart a nose tackle? Yes, or is he a 3-tech?
He is mainly a nose tackle.
Okay.
Whereas Jones is mostly playing the 3. And then, honestly, the thing about it is we blend our defensive ends and linebackers on the outside so much that, I mean, if when Autry's playing, he's got his hand down, but you're just as likely to see Bud Dupree or Harold Landry line up in the same spot and you play.
Yeah. Yeah, and you talk about Danico Autry. He's been kind of a sleeper player everywhere he's been. When he was in Oakland and then Indianapolis and now Tennessee, I mean, he's been a very solid pass rusher wherever he's been.
Mm-hmm. Offensively, the sad part offensively is that we really haven't had anyone, at this point, the good guys on the team. We really haven't anyone standing up. I could kind of say Anthony Ferguson, but I feel like he's probably been in the league long enough. Most real NFL fans know who he is. So I'm going to say Nick Westbrook-Akina. And the main reason why for him is he has unfortunately been thrust into the wide receiver 2 and some days the wide receiver 1 role. In situations where he really wasn't ready. And, while he hasn't played fantastic, he has played very admirably, especially on third down. He is, A.J. Brown definitely dominated third down. I was very glad to see that. But especially on third down, especially on our third and mids, probably 5 to 7 yards, Westbrook-Akina does a really good job of getting just enough separation to get, first down plus a yard. And I think what we're going to see is if we can get Julio healthy, which, I mean, to be completely honest, Julio was a glorified decoy tonight. But it seemed to work because it seemed to keep A.J. Brown on single coverage. So I don't know if that's going to work in the future. Hopefully the mini bye helps. It's so hard because we're kind of in this weird spot where if we could just even if the Cardinals do manage to beat the Colts, we do we shut it down or do we play for the 1 seed? With Henry do we keep him out completely until the playoffs, or do we try to bring him into week 18, and use basically that as a preseason game, plan 2 drives. But anyway, digressing here, if we can get them healthy and Westbrook-Akina can play a true wide receiver 3, I would stack him up against a lot of the wide receiver 3s in the NFL.
It's funny you mentioned him because that's who I kind of figured you might say. He's kind of, because most of like you said, most of the pieces on Tennessee's offense, they're pretty notable. Everybody kind of knows who they are, except for him. And like you said, he's really had to step up this year with injuries to A.J. Brown and Julio Jones. Like he's kind of had to at times be wide receiver 1. I've had to play him on my fantasy team a couple of times because in a pinch and A.J. Brown's out. Oh yeah, throw Westbrook in there. Man, I tell you what is going on with Tennessee in the first half tonight? I mean, they could not get out of their own way. San Francisco is trying to give the game away to them, and it was like they didn't want it. It was like this tug of war of not wanting the game tonight.
Yeah, I mean, unfortunately, it was a continuation of the second half against Pittsburgh. And part of our problem and our biggest issue was that we could not move the ball on first down. I mean, I think you saw the stat during the game. I think at some point in the fourth quarter, of 9 of our 12 first downs, I went for 0 or negative yards. And when you are a cadence-based offense, when you are a schedule-based offense like the Titans are, which I love it to death, don't get me wrong, you have to, when you are that unsuccessful on first down, it puts you in a bad spot. Now, what we managed to get away with is that we got a really good A.J. Brown game that bailed us out. Look at that first drive that we scored on. You had 3 first downs on third down by A.J. Brown of 10 or more yards.
Yeah.
I mean, that isn't a high success situation. It's just we had amazing play to bail us out. Eventually, as you saw the game go on, and honestly, I credit San Francisco's defensive lines, especially for a lot of this, is that they were able to bottle us up. Not having your starting left side of your line doesn't help either. But, I credit them for bottling us up for the most of the game. It really wasn't until probably that last drive where we ended up punting it away, but we did, take our pound of flesh with 4 minutes off the clock, where we were able to actually kind of push the ball a little bit on first down. And so I think really what happened there with that first half is that we were stuck in the mud. Our defense wasn't able to get off the field. We weren't able to establish any sort of cadence. And unfortunately, it took a half for A.J. Brown to find his groove again to really bail us out.
Yeah, A.J. Brown had a heck of a night back. He's been pretty underwhelming all year. I feel like I can be safe in saying that. Been banged up a lot this year. So is Julio. Not really sure what Titans fans expected out of Julio this year, but yeah, he was not good. You know who else wasn't good tonight though? Jimmy Garoppolo. They played a stat. They put a stat up at the beginning of the game that said when Jimmy G throws an interception, they're like 0-6, and whatever else their record is when he doesn't throw an interception. It was pretty good. It was like I think it was like 8-3 or something. But that's what
Yeah.
they said, you know. And as soon as he threw that first interception, I said, "Well, San Francisco's losing."
And you know what the crazy part is he ended up with 322 yards passing,
Yeah,
which if you watch that game, you would have thought he ended up with like 215.
yeah,
But you forget that you end up with a very long 56-yard pass to Deebo Samuel that led to them tying the game up. But you really take that away. That first quarter, he looked awesome. He looked like the Jimmy Garoppolo that was supposed to be the heir apparent to Tom Brady. And they looked like they were ready to cruise. It was Jackrabbit Jenkins of all people stepping up and making a play. Now on a badly thrown ball, don't get me wrong.
man.
But yeah, Jackrabbit Jenkins, who I can tell you has been much maligned amongst the Titans fan base this year. I personally called for him to be cut about a month and a half ago. And for him to step up and make that play. And then after that, honestly, the defense was able to hold. The offense was spooked. I mean, for 2.5 quarters, they were spooked. They had nothing going on, and it really wasn't until that big play by Samuel. Like, I mean, again, it was kind of their offense kind of ended up in a similar situation where if it wasn't for Samuel, they had nothing. It's similar to how we were with AJ Brown. But it honestly, it didn't seem like they. I mean, it seemed like they were. Let's be honest. That game could have been 24-0. Niners early in the second quarter, and it seems like when they weren't able to cash in on some of those drives, it really shook their confidence. And listen, I like Jimmy. He got to a Super Bowl. I mean, like, that's not insignificant. I'm a Rex Grossman, but
Okay, that's fair.
but yeah, but you look at him and there is, simply put, he does not seem to perform well in critical situations. When he is healthy, when he has a clean pocket, he can deliver the ball to his receivers and run a pretty efficient offense. When things go off the rails, whether or not depending on what Jimmy you get that night, sometimes he can respond, and sometimes it is a hot mess to the tune of primetime Kirk Cousins.
That's what I was just getting ready to say. I have caught a lot of flack over the last couple of years. You know, in the offseason, there was the reports that Washington went all in on Stafford, and we weren't able to get him. And so fans were saying we should trade for Jimmy G. Jimmy G was the next guy on the list. And I was like, listen, if you guys didn't like Kirk Cousins, you're really not going to like Jimmy G, because guess what? He's the Kirk Cousins of the AFC. And they're the same player. If you look at, everything you just talked about, him struggling in prime time and, being able to pad his stats all the time. And just like tonight, over 300 yards, a touchdown, and 2 picks. Well, if you take away those 2 picks, he has a great game, and San Francisco probably wins.
Yeah. The thing about Kirk is that Kirk is the guy that we're going to have to tell the generation after us was not actually good. He is the guy. He is the guy that kids 15, 20 years from now are going to look at his stats and say, you know who was good? Kirk Cousins. And we're going to be like, no, he was not. Let me tell you why.
Yeah, I definitely agree with that, and I was looking at it and I wrote down all the San Francisco stats because I had to figure out where they went wrong.
Mm-hmm.
And Deebo Samuel outperformed AJ Brown tonight.
Oh,
and
yeah, absolutely.
Jimmy G outperformed Ryan Tannehill, except for the interceptions. Those turnovers killed not only San Francisco on that possession, they killed the team's confidence as a whole, like you were talking about.
Absolutely. You look at the stats from tonight's game. Both offenses ran the same amount of plays. San Francisco had over 100 more yards. They averaged over 2 more yards per play. And the Titans, who are a run-based team, basically broke even with the Niners in rushing yards. 90 versus 83. I mean, you could argue that San Francisco's penalties were in more critical points than Tennessee's because Tennessee did end up with more penalty yards. But even then, you think about it. You think about the holding call on the Foreman run that very well could have been a touchdown. It would have been called, but it would have been called a little back for that face mask anyway. But if you think about when, especially in the second half, the false start or the false start on the third down, the false start on the fourth down, and then the free play that Tannehill, again, give him the chance and he'll make the play, said, hey, I got a free play. Let me toss it up to my 6'3" physical freak and let's see if he can come down with it. And AJ Brown just so happened to get the worst defender on in San Francisco's defensive backfield on him and was able to just muscle him up for a play.
Yeah. Yeah,
I will say this as a Titans fan, we've had multiple games this year where we have been the better team on the field and we've lost because of some sort of boneheaded play, some sort of inability to execute. The Jets game obviously is a horrendous loss for us. And I would honestly argue the Steelers game was kind of in that same boat. So to be completely honest, it's kind of nice to get one back.
Yeah, sometimes you get things that roll your way, one way or another. But, another stat that I looked at, and I thought he had a bigger presence than this in this game, but George Kittle had 2 catches for 21 yards in this game. I mean, he's been arguably the hottest 49ers player up to this point.
Vrabel pulled one out of the old Belichick playbook where he's like, I am going to pick one player. I'm going to shut you down. To a certain extent, that's why Samuel had a great game. Don't get me wrong. But part of the reason why Samuel had a good game is we decided that Kittle was not going to beat us. If you watch that game, you saw no fewer than a dozen plays where there was a safety and a linebacker on Kittle at all times. So you weren't going to throw it high on us. You weren't going to throw it deep on us. You weren't going to throw it short on us. Kittle was not going to beat us. And to a certain extent, it worked. I mean, as a tight end, and also as a receiver to a certain extent, if a team doubles you, then all game, like your presence in and of itself has contributed to your team. It's on the rest of your skill position players at that point to make a play.
Yeah. And to go back to what we were talking about earlier, I think that's what's wrong with Washington's offense is teams, they know that let's bracket Terry and they don't have any other weapons. And they're right, I mean, Curtis Samuel's been hurt all year and, Logan Thomas has been hurt most of the year and he's not coming back. There's nobody else on that offense. And so go ahead.
Yeah. I mean, when you look at receiving, when JD McKissick, who has honestly come in clutch for me for my fantasy team more than once this year, is your second leading receiver. I mean, yes, we're talking about Deebo Samuel maybe leading the team in rushing touchdowns. That's great. Positionless players are great. Don't get me wrong. But I mean, Adam Humphries got cut by the Titans after 2 years where he couldn't stay on the field, and he's your third leading receiver. Honestly, that says a lot. And it doesn't say a lot of good things about Adam Humphries.
Well, honestly, the only time I ever notice Adam Humphries is if it's like 3rd and 5 to 3rd and 10, and it's a crucial drive. Next thing you know, Adam Humphries is on the sideline making a toe tap catch 1 yard past the first down marker. That is the only time I notice him. There was a play actually Tuesday night where I was catching some flack because I said Adam Humphries should have caught that ball in the corner of the end zone. I don't know if you watched that game or not, but
I did not.
There was a ball that Garrett Gilbert threw to him back shoulder, and Humphries turned around too late, so he wasn't able to catch it. But it was right there on his hands. It went right through him, and so that was one of those Adam Humphrey plays where I'm like, you got to have those.
Yeah. Honestly, when you look at Washington's team, from my perspective, I mean, you were a playoff team last year. Was it an ugly playoff team? Sure. But you played the eventual Super Bowl champions to a competitive game in the playoffs. Let's be honest here. That's not something that you just ignore. I mean, your defense regressed. Let's be honest. I mean, you lost Young, which certainly didn't help. And your offense, I mean, let's be honest here. would Fitzpatrick had done better? Like maybe, probably. Like there were going to be 3 games he was going to look amazing, and you didn't get those 3 games out of him. Now Heineke, the Heineke experience is what it is. You can say a lot about him, but generally there's only one good quarterback that comes out of every XFL. Hopefully he's not the one, but I don't think that team is that far away.
No, I've heard some people say, that we're a quarterback away. I don't exactly think we're there because there's a lot of other pieces that we need in order to get to that point. And, Ron Rivera keeps speaking on, he wants to get everything ready and then he wants to drop the quarterback in. He wants to rebuild just like the Buffalo Bills did. And that's fine, but you're going to run out of time with some of these players that you've got.
Yeah.
I mean, one positive that I can say has come out of this season is Jonathan Allen. Jonathan Allen has really become that dominant interior pass rusher that we saw him be at Alabama. And, a lot of fans were scared because we just paid him in the offseason. And so they're like, well, we've seen, the best out of him and he got paid now, so now he's going to kind of regress. And so it's been really nice to see him play Pro Bowl football. I say that because he just got voted, but
Side note, if I get on my soapbox here, we are now clear. Essentially, well, in all intents and purposes, we are 3 games clear of the Colts with 3 games to play.
Yeah.
The Colts got 7 guys in the Pro Bowl. We have 1. Jeffrey Simmons is having a career year. He is one of the 5 or 6 most disruptive defensive linemen in the AFC. And he got completely snubbed. Let's be honest. Offensively, Everyone's hurt. Sure. But, for our defense to, essentially be left out in the cold with that Pro Bowl voting, it's frustrating. Don't get me wrong.
So you guys didn't even have any alternates?
As of now, we have exactly 1 Pro Bowler. I believe it is Byard. I'll have to look.
I was going to say, I feel like Byard's the best free safety in football or
He
up
is,
there.
Yeah, I would argue that he is. To be completely honest, though, the Buffalo safeties are both very good. Micah Hyde and Jordan Poyer are, both extremely good. They ended up 3rd and 4th in safety voting in the AFC, which seems kind of odd. I'm not going to lie.
Well, I was the only 2 that I think that might be better than Byard as far as free safeties go are Justin Simmons in Denver and Jesse Bates in Cincinnati. And both of them are being helped right now by playing on dominant defenses as well.
That's fair. Cincinnati, dominant defense. Wow. What a weird statement.
I know. Yeah. Kind of crazy. Now, I do have one point to make about the Pro Bowl, and it blows my mind. And so I'm going to kind of go off my soapbox a little bit here. I cannot believe that Brandon Sheriff got voted as a starter on the Pro Bowl team. Brandon Sheriff is kind of a hot topic when it comes to Washington fans. It's a very 50-50 crowd. You have a large portion of them that say, just go ahead and pay him. He's the best offensive lineman we've had since Trent Williams. And then there's other parts that he's not worth the money. Do what the Patriots did with Joe Thuney. Just let him go. And I seen that he got voted to the Pro Bowl, and the problem with him is, just like Joe Thuney, he can't stay healthy. He will give you 6 to 10 games a year, and that's what you're going to get out of him. And that's just my little spiel about Sheriff.
Look, you can say what you're saying here is a lot of the same arguments people have about Taylor Lewan in Tennessee. And we ended up paying him, and he plays half the year, and then inevitably what happens is, of the 8 games he plays, he has 2 games where he's a net negative because he's holding false starting and acting like he was on Broadway the night before, and then the other 6 games he plays at a Pro Bowl caliber level. What I will say about Sheriff is this: what happened with us with Harold Landry and Jeffrey Simmons is that they were 2nd and 3rd in their positions in the fan voting, and then they were completely left out of the Pro Bowl once the coaches and players got their chance. So clearly, Sheriff, if nothing else, either has the respect or the friendship of a lot of people that are actually in the game. And, honestly, as a fan, you have to um, be excited about that to a certain extent.
Yeah, I suppose, I'm kind of in the let him walk crowd if I put my point out there. I'm in the let him walk crowd. I'm also not in the Taylor Heineke is the franchise quarterback crowd either. So,
I like Taylor Heineke, but I'm also the same guy that thought that the Jags should have gave Minshew another chance. So I like scrappy, slightly underarmed quarterbacks.
yeah.
You know, I say that as someone who also hopes Ryan Tannehill can convert on third down every week. So
Well, it's funny you say that. I want to highlight a key word you just said there in underarmed
mhm.
because that is the most frustrating part about Taylor Heineke being a quarterback. I tell people ask me, I have Chief fans ask me all the time, well, what is Heineke like, as a quarterback, or what are your thoughts on Heineke? I said, Heineke is Mahomes if he had a noodle arm. So that's who he is. Like he's gonna do the crazy run out of a sack, run sideways, make a crazy throw, drop his arm angle down, but it's probably not going to go further than 20 yards because that's who he is.
Yeah, I think he is someone who in the proper situation can win you an ugly game, can win you a dirty game, and also he's someone. The biggest thing about Taylor Heineke is he is fearless. That guy will go into any game thinking that he can win that game with no doubts in his mind whatsoever. Whether or not he actually can is a separate story. But he's got the part with Heineke that I could see that is both I imagine for you is both frustrating and frustrating is the fact that in every other way, he's probably the quarterback you want. But the fact that any ball past 30 looks more like a fly ball and less looks like a liner is really what's going to hold you back, especially with someone like Terry McLaurin. Now you give him a big physical DK Metcalf type, he can probably do a lot of good things with him. But I don't know if Heineke is truly compatible with the backs and receivers that you have. And I think that mismatch is why you've seen kind of the up and down performance that Washington has shown over the course of this year.
Yeah, I definitely agree with that. I had some fans ask me about Taylor Heineke, and I said, listen, Taylor Heineke is essentially Ryan Fitzpatrick, except I think he has even less of an arm than Ryan Fitzpatrick has, and which everybody thought was struggling. And that's what I tell people. I mean, when people ask me, so what kind of quarterback do you want? And I tell them, said, pretty much I just want the quarterback with the strongest arm at this point. I want somebody who can get the ball to Terry McLaurin when he's 10 yards away from the nearest defender. I'm sick of seeing the comeback, the contested catch. It drives me insane every week.
But you had him. His name was Dwayne Haskins.
No, oh my gosh.
Come on now.
Uh,
All right. Here's the thing. Dwayne Haskins should never have gone to Washington. There are two types of people who there are two types of players that go home. There are the ones who fall back into their old habits and they've got their old crowd and inevitably leads to hangers on and poor performance. Or you have the guys who thrive being back in their hometown and have their support system. I mean, Haskins was very clearly the former. And
yeah.
if you look at Haskins physically, let's take the decision making out of it. Haskins physically is the closest thing we have seen to prime Ben Roethlisberger since Big Ben. You look at his arm strength, you look at his size, his ability to take a hit, his ability to move within the pocket, and his ability to deliver the ball deep downfield. He is physically Ben Roethlisberger. Now the question is can he mentally put it together? And no, he was never going to do it in Washington. I
No.
agree. I mean, it was fine. It was fine. I get why they cut him loose. I understand why they did it. At the same time, like you kind of had the prototype there. It just didn't work out in your favor.
Yeah. It's funny because I ran this by my dad. I told you my dad's a Dolphins fan. Uh, the whole draft process, all I heard about Dwayne Haskins was he's Black Dan Marino. And The whole time, my dad goes, "No, there's no way. There's no way that he can be the Black Dan Marino. I've seen him play. He's not Black Dan Marino." And I was like, "I give him a shot. He'll watch out. He'll be breaking Marino's single season touchdown record." And I swear, I'm pretty sure my dad about keeled over when I told him that, because he's the biggest Dan Marino fan I've ever met, and Haskins was the furthest thing from Dan Marino. So, it
Growing
is
up
what
an
it
East,
is. If he
yeah,
could just
growing
get
up,
his off the field stuff figured out,
yeah,
he would be such a much better player.
yeah, and honestly, I think Pittsburgh's the best place for him. The fact that he didn't play when Ben got COVID, well, I think was probably a sign that he didn't develop the way they were probably hoping. I'm very curious to see what Pittsburgh does with him next year. If they keep him on the roster, even if they bring somebody else in, I think that is to a certain extent a sign that they feel like he can become something. But I think what Pittsburgh does with him this year will be a big indicator of kind of what his long-term perspective may be. Growing up in Eastern Ohio, it is funny. I grew up an Ohio State fan. I still, in a lot of ways, do root for them. One of the things that absolutely perplexes Ohio State fans is why they cannot seem to find a quarterback that will play well in the NFL. I mean, it is at this point, it's a bit of a running joke. You look at everyone since, I mean, you want to go back to 2004, you want to go back to the national title team, Craig Krenzel. I mean, he was never supposed to be anything, but Troy Smith, had a cup of coffee with the Ravens. I think he won a single game in London back when they first did that. Dwayne Haskins didn't do much. I mean, Terrell Pryor never did anything as a quarterback. Justin Fields is your best chance, and he's sitting on a 4-win team in Chicago right now.
Yeah. I also am a fan of a team that cannot produce a college quarterback. I'm a Florida Gator fan, and it's been rough these last couple of years. The closest thing we ever had to a franchise quarterback in the NFL is Tim Tebow, and we saw how that went. That didn't go very well.
What are you guys talking about? You had Cam Newton.
No, we never had Cam Newton. We had him, but we never had him.
I still say that the best 30 for 30 that hasn't been made is the story of that 2008 Florida Gators team and how nobody got murdered. I mean, just to be completely honest.
I still argue that might be one of the top 5 college teams in history.
Oh, probably. But the sheer dynamics of that team, Urban Meyer, Tim Tebow, the Pouncey brothers, Joe Hayden, Cam Newton. I mean, Aaron Hernandez, I could go on.
Percy Harvin.
Yes. How that team did not self-destruct on itself with all those personalities and find a way to keep it all together is a story that I need to hear about.
Yeah, I'm surprised they haven't made a 30 for 30 about it. So what are Tennessee's biggest needs this offseason?
Well, I mean, I guess it starts with if you think Ryan Tannehill can continue to be the guy, which I believe the answer is yes. And what's going to happen is, I mean, honestly, I think Luan probably leaves after this year. We can cut him and get most of our money back. I think there's a lot of there, and we're going to be fairly cap tight. So I see him probably leaving. The question is if Radins can be the guy as the replacement there. The Radins that played tonight looks like he can make Taylor Lewan expendable. The Radins we've seen up until this point has looked like a guy who could struggle to stay on a team.
Yeah, I definitely agree. Like he put Nick Bosa on an island tonight and just pushed him away.
He made Nick Bosa flip sides, essentially.
Yeah.
You saw in the second half, they were moving him around to try to basically get him away because Radins had his number tonight.
Yeah.
Offensively, we need another receiver. Honestly, sadly, we need an Adam Humphries type. He just couldn't stay healthy on the field for us.
Yeah.
I would love to have a healthy Adam Humphries. Defensively, the issue becomes long-term what our secondary is going to look like. With the way our secondary is right now, you've got Christian Fulton, who is turning into a starter to above average starter. I think he's got a chance to be a fringe Pro Bowler, maybe once or twice. I don't think he's going to be, your Stephon Gilmore, stud CB1 kind of guys. And then you've got a couple of old guys. You've got Jackrabbit Jenkins. I mean, Buster Screen is getting important critical minutes for us right now. at the cornerback position. That is not sustainable in the long term. The question is what happens with Caleb Farley? And unfortunately, I don't think Farley, with his injury history and then with him playing a game and a half and immediately blowing out his ACL, we can't count on him. I think, unfortunately, we've got to go after a corner. But if you look at our team, I'm not that worried about it per se. I mean, we're locked. I think from a Henry perspective, I think the running backs that we have behind him right now are the running backs we need. We have Donta Foreman, who is the guy you bring in when you need 70% of Derrick Henry, when you need to spell him. And we've got Jerry McNichols and Darrington Evans, who serve as our scat backs, our screen guys, who can, pass pro, all of that, which Derrick Henry is an okay receiver, but you would much rather have those guys taking those snaps when you have Henry resting up to do what he's actually really good at. So yeah, I think in short, we need one receiver, one lineman, one corner. If the rest of the team continues to develop, regression notwithstanding, I think we're in a decent place to continue to be essentially the same team next year.
It's funny that you bring up the running back depth, because I've been having this argument all season long with Washington fans. I love Antonio Gibson. I mean, what he's become and what he can develop into, even going forward. But we need another bell cow back, because J.D. McKissic has proven that he can't carry the ball more than 5 to 10 times a game, because he's been banged up, both the years he's been with us. And we have Jarrett Patterson, but I think he's proven this year that he can't carry the ball, 20 times a game like Antonio Gibson has been. And I don't even know if he has that skill level.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, you saw what he did at Buffalo, but I mean, you also have to take into account that was Buffalo. Same thing with Raduns, the left tackle for Tennessee. That was at North Dakota State, so it's kind of the same thing there.
Certainly. I think with the thing about running backs, especially in the modern NFL, and I say that as one of the few teams that actually has the kind of running back that will be the exception to this rule, is that honestly, unless you have a Derrick Henry caliber player, someone who is pushing, trying to push into the pantheon of all time, whether or not you can put him wherever you want, but it's someone who has a legitimate chance to push himself into the pantheon. If you don't have that level of running back, go get an Earth, Wind, and Fire setup. Go get a power back. Go get a first down back. Go get a scat back. I mean, they are cheap. Running backs are cheap. They are easily replaceable, and there is so much talent at that position right now that you can basically piece it together. I mean, look at what Tampa Bay, to a certain extent, did a really, really good version of this last year, but they were lucky enough to get a 2.5 down back and Leonard Fournette for basically nothing, with Ronald Jones serving as kind of the other side of that.
I think there's a couple of teams that have done that setup really well. You mentioned Tampa. I love Dallas has a really good setup. Pollard is outplaying Zeke right now. What they've done in Green Bay is a really good version of that. There's a couple of teams that have, I think they've kind of overdone it and set themselves up extremely nice.
Absolutely.
Okay. Who does Tennessee have next on their schedule?
So Tennessee gets the mini bye, which is very nice, and then we actually get the Ryan Tannehill revenge game next week. This is the first time he has played the Dolphins since he left Miami. It is at home. It's the 1:00 Sunday game. And I'm actually curious right now. I'm not sure if I want them to win this week or not. I'm not sure what would be better for us coming in. Obviously, Miami is somehow the hottest team in football. They've won their last 6 games after looking like they were left for dead. They're facing a Saints team, and I mean, they're very much in contention for a playoff spot, especially if they beat the Saints. They are 8-7 coming into Nashville, when we were supposed to have the easiest strength of schedule on the way, the rest of the way out. It feels like it didn't turn into that, because if you look at what was because after we play the Saints, it was supposed to be easy for the rest of the way out for us. Well, think about it this way: we got the Texans and Titans, sure. But we also got the Patriots, who turned into a top team, a Steelers team that refuses to die, even though they really should, and a Niners team that is also fighting for a playoff spot. I mean, like, we are going to be battle tested here. When you looked at the schedule after we got through the Rams, the assumption was we had two easy wins to finish the year out. Now, I mean, the Texans, for whatever reason, were able to beat us in Nashville. So you can't write that as a W. I mean, yes, we've had two terrible losses this year. We all know this. And the Dolphins are playing great ball. I mean, they're finding ways to win. And if you look at the teams they've beaten, yes, a lot of these are teams that are struggling right now, but they also beat the Ravens on that in a very fun Thursday night game, which that game happened. They beat up on the Panthers, who have at times been a decent team this year. That game happened. That being said, the mini bye is going to be huge for us. The fact that AJ Brown and Julio Jones were both on the field this week, and we've got the mini bye coming after that. We should have, 97% of AJ Brown, and we're going to probably have whatever version of Julio we're going to get for the remainder of the year. I don't know what that is. If that's glorified decoy Julio, I mean, so be it. But I hope Ryan Tannehill comes in looking to light it up, putting 350 yards of passing on the Dolphins and putting it out of play early. Hopefully, obviously, Arizona is actually able to get a win this upcoming week, this on Saturday, and we don't have to worry about it. But I fear that Cardinals team is going to continue to struggle, and that Colts team, is, I think, our front runners. If they can jump out to a 14-0 lead with their run game right now, which obviously has some shades similar to Tennessee's when we have Henry, can keep them ahead. But I fear that if that Cardinals team comes out flat, that's what we're going to see from that game. We've got Miami next week. I expect us to win. Again, I'm not ruling Miami out. Hopefully it's not a big deal. And hopefully for that Texans game in week 18, we're either playing for a legitimate shot at the 1 seed or we're putting everybody on ice to try to give them some rest going into the playoffs.
Yeah, I always tell people when it comes to divisional games, go ahead and throw the records out the window because they really don't matter, And I mean, perfect example, Tennessee's couple of losses they've had. The Texans coming in there and winning, that was big, but it's family business, as I like to say. So to finish this off, give me 2 studs and 2 duds for Tennessee this game. We've kind of talked a little bit about it, but
I think it's pretty simple. Your first stud there is going to be AJ Brown. I mean, 141 yards passing, our only passing touchdown of the game. That is, I mean, he stepped up. And like I said earlier, we got 85% of one of our big three, and you saw what happened. Another stud on this one, looking defensively. Again, I called him out earlier, and I know this sounds kind of weird. Buster Skrine. I mean, he played in NFL Europe, for Pete's sakes. I mean, the guy is old and he's getting us quality time. Now, I should probably give this to Jackrabbit Jenkins for getting us the interception that turned that game over, but that was a horrible ball.
That's who I thought you were going to give it to.
Oh, but honestly, to a certain extent, that was such a badly thrown ball that I think any of our corners could have made that play. But I think when you look at it, another person I'd like to give honorable mention to is Zach Cunningham. I am a Vandy grad, so to pick him up was a boon for us. I do find it very interesting that the Houston Texans, the modicum of morality in the NFL, decided that he was the cancer on the team. And I will be very glad to have a former second-round pick and former Pro Bowler, shoring up our middle linebacker. He was our leading tackler last week. Only had 4 tackles this week, but I mean, when you look at how hurt our linebacking core has, pretty much every one of our linebackers who has played a lot of time for us has been out for 2 or more games this year. We've had historical levels of injuries from the Titans this year. So to pick up another starter level linebacker, even if we only get him for the rest of the year, we do have him under an injury. We do have him for fairly cheap next year. He does have a very large injury waiver. So hopefully he stays healthy. But I mean, these you were talking about you were referencing Melvin Ingram earlier. I mean, those kinds of veteran pickups at random points in the year are the kind of things that can put you over the top. And I think right now that he could be one of those guys for us. Looking at our duds. I mean, I know he got the touchdown, but Donta Foreman. I mean, like, how many times did he look just law? I mean, how many times did he get to the line and he made contact, got contact within a yard of the line of scrimmage, and just wasn't able to do anything with it? I mean, he was 9 for 17. He did have his one long run, get called back. But I mean, when we talk about a lot of our struggles on first down, he was the guy with the ball in his hands. Now, yes, am I used to my running back being able to get hit 2 yards behind the line of scrimmage and somehow turn into an 8-yard gain? Yes, I very much am. But when you have a run-based attack, you expect your power back to be able to do something with it. That would be my first dud. My second dud obviously has got to be Julio Jones. And to a certain extent, this isn't his fault because he's trying to play hurt. I get it. And to a certain extent, he was able to decoy. But we got to have at least 2 of those guys healthy, making meaningful contributions in order to get anywhere deep into the playoffs. I talked about Kansas City earlier. I mean, let's be honest here. We saw what happened when Kansas City and when Tennessee got to the AFC title game. We played a Kansas City team. We didn't play a bad game. We just got blown out by their weapons. And I mean, are those weapons, have they lost a quarter step? Are they a little bit are they not quite where they were 2 years ago? Sure, mainly because they can't seem to catch a ball right now, and every ball that bounces off their hands seems to find its way into the arms of a loving defender who will gladly take that ball from them. But my apologies. And so that being said, you see what happens when look at Tampa Bay. We're going to roll out, we were going to roll out the 2019. We're going to roll out the 2017 Pro Bowl team in 2020, and if half of them are hurt, it doesn't matter because we still have enough weapons that it doesn't matter. And I mean, everyone was talking. For example, you go back to that Tampa Bay game. They talked about how Fournette was hurt. They talked about how they talked about how Godwin was blown out. They talked about how AJ Brown obviously wasn't playing, and they were complaining. They were saying Brady didn't have any weapons to play with. Well, I hate to say it, but I mean, they still have Ronald Jones. They still have Scotty Miller. They still have half of Mike Evans. I hate to say it, but the dregs of the Bucks, they still have OJ Howard. They still have Cameron Brate, and they still have whatever's left of Gronk. The dredges of Tampa seem a whole heck of a lot better than what we've been playing with for a lot of games this year.
Yeah, I don't want to hear anything from Tampa. If just look at my roster. That's all I got to say. Just look at what I got.
You managed to beat him this year.
Yeah, that was probably our Super Bowl.
Again, your quarterback's fearless, even if you can't get him more than 20 yards downfield.
Yeah, I believe he made it his personal mission this year to beat Tampa. He saw Tampa on the schedule. He said, "I don't care if we go 1-16, we're beating Tampa." All right, so to finish this one out, give me a defensive dud. I know this one's going to be kind of hard, but defensive dud.
I mean, oh man, honestly, I'm about to pull up the box score on this one because I'm going to have to. I was really happy. I mean, the defensive line, I would say, a quarter and a half into the game, I was going to say the defensive line because we couldn't do anything, but we managed to step it up. Honestly, I know this sounds kind of crazy. You're good. I know this sounds a little crazy. I expected more out of Jeffrey Simmons. I expected him to be upset that he had gotten snubbed from the Pro Bowl. I expected an angry game from him. Two total tackles. I mean, he was fine. Don't get me wrong. But I expected him to be the guy on defense, and he just wasn't that tonight.
Yep. Sorry, that's what I was doing. I was pulling the box score up for you.
Yep.
I mean, you're not wrong. I seen Dane Cruikshank pull out a couple of key plays tonight too. He have the interception?
Yes, Dan Cruikshank is one of the guys that I guess he's another one of those guys that you don't know about if you're not a Tennessee fan. I was actually joking with some friends at the beginning of the year after we had gone in and beat Kansas City, and I said, "Can you guys name 3 guys on the Tennessee defense right now?" And I think one of the 5 was able to actually do it.
Yeah, I mean it's a tough task. I mean, especially if it's a team that you don't follow.
Yeah. The thing about our defense is that across the board we have people who are playing hard. We've got team tackling. We are making good open field tackles, which sounds like silly, sounds rather fundamental, but honestly, like it is the difference between a 4 yard gain and an 8 yard gain, and that adds up over the course of an entire game. We've got dogs. I mean, simply put, we may not be the most talented defense, but they like playing with each other and they're playing out there playing for each other, and you see the results. I mean, you even looking back at our last few games, if you look at what our defense has done, especially since the Patriots game, which again was another one of those games where we had some ridiculously critical fumbles that the Patriots were able to convert to points. Since that game, blank the Jags, which I mean, hey, no one else has blanked the Jags, no matter how bad they are. After all those fumbles, all of those critical mistakes against Pittsburgh, where they were handed a crap field. You go back to that Pittsburgh game, you look at that scoring, you realize that scoring was a QB sneak from Ben. The second half was a QB sneak from Ben and 3 field goals. You go back, look at tonight's game. They held a very live Niners team. We say what you want about their offense, say what you want about Jimmy G. I mean, they've been able to put points up against other teams. We held them to 17 points.
To this point, Jimmy G's been playing like he did in his Super Bowl year.
Yeah. I mean, we've against decent competition, we've averaged 10 points a game over the last 3 weeks. Go back and look through the rest of our schedule. Look at these games. Look at these games where we've held good teams to low scores. We've held the Colts the Colts version 1, 16 points. The Chiefs, we held them to 3. Like, I know the Chiefs were struggling and everyone kind of wrote that off and said the Titans caught them in a bad bite. We still held the Chiefs to 3 points. We held the Rams to 16 points. Now, I'm someone who's very low on the Rams. I don't think Stafford can blame his historically high amount of pick sixes on the Detroit offensive line and receiving core for this year. We held the Saints to 21 points. We've had games where our defense has been able to play extremely well. I mean, we only scored 20 points today. Like the offense that was on the field tonight was not going to win a Super Bowl, just straight up. But that offense that was on the field tonight can probably tread water long enough for us to get Henry, possibly something resembling a healthy Julio back, which at that point, that is a team that can go deep in the playoffs.
Yeah, I agree with you there. I mean, your team really is what I want our team to be. It's a extremely strong run game. I mean, Antonio Gibson has proven that he can carry the ball 20, 25 times a game and be a stout runner of the football and get yards after contact. Not to the extent that Derrick Henry is by any means. And then our defense being what it was last year, I expected them to, be a top 10 defense this year. They took a big step back. Injuries have been a big part of our problems this year with Chase Young and, Montez Sweat being out for 5 weeks. That hurt. And, even this last game, signing guys to play just so they could, fill a team for the game. Just one of those things that kind of Tennessee is kind of my end goal, really.
It's weird to hear another fan base say that. Let me tell you what.
Well, let me just say this. I have been a fan of the Washington football team since 1999, which is when I started really following football and got into it.
Mm-hmm.
And we haven't had a franchise quarterback. We've never won more than 10 games in a season.
To be fair, you had RG3.
That doesn't count. Nope.
It's not his fault. It's not his fault that your offensive line let his knees get nuked.
It's also his fault that he was an arrogant prick. And he let all that go to his head, and he went to Shanahan, told Shanahan, you need to use me as a pocket passer. I'm not going to keep running the ball like you want me to. We need to do away with this read option, and we need to spread them out and let me throw the ball deep. So I don't feel bad for the guy. And then Then here we are, 2021. He wants to put out a book about surviving Washington. Oh, that is the soapbox you don't want to get me started on. See, woo. But Brandon, I want to say thanks for coming on tonight. We're gonna get out of here. Appreciate having you. You know, maybe I can
Absolutely.
bring you back on for the next time that Tennessee goes into prime time, which I'm sure will be
So,
soon.
hopefully we make the playoffs. So I guess I'll see you then.
Yeah, definitely. All right, this is your Burgundy boss, Derek, signing out.